Ladies and gentlemen, life is a battlefield of perception. The way you see yourself, the story you tell yourself about who you are, determines the limits of what you can achieve. Too often we shackle ourselves with doubt, with self-imposed constraints, with the weight of our past mistakes. We accept an identity that is smaller than the one we are capable of embodying. But here's the truth. You are not a static entity. You are not carved in stone. You are a process, a dynamic being unfolding and evolving with every thought, every action, every decision. Every decision. If you change the way you see yourself, you change the trajectory of your life, because perception shapes reality. So tonight I want you to ask yourself, are you seeing your potential clearly? Or are you allowing fear, insecurity, and past failures to define you? The answer to that question could mean the difference between a life of quiet desperation and a life of purpose, strength, and achievement. Let's uncover that answer together. Let's challenge the way we see ourselves. Because transformation starts in the mind before it manifests in the world. Your identity is not fixed. It's a story you tell yourself. From the moment you become aware of yourself, you start constructing a narrative about who you are. This narrative is shaped by experiences, feedback from others, cultural expectations, and your own interpretations of success and failure. But what most people fail to realize is that this story is not an objective truth. It's a perspective, a lens through which you view yourself in the world. It is fluid, malleable, and constantly evolving based on how you choose to interpret your life. Many people assume that their identity is something rigid, something handed down to them by their past, their upbringing, or their genetics. They say, this is just who I am, as if their personality, abilities, and limitations are set in stone. But that assumption is false. Who you are is not a static entity. It is a process, a narrative that you reinforce through your thoughts and actions. The beliefs you hold about yourself determine your behavior, and your behavior, in turn, shapes the kind of person you become. Imagine two individuals who face the same setback, a job rejection. One sees it as confirmation of their inadequacy. I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed. The other sees it as a challenge. I need to improve. This is an opportunity to grow. The event is the same, but their interpretations are different. One person solidifies a self-image of failure, while the other reinforces a self-image of resilience. This is the power of narrative. The way you frame your experiences dictates how you move forward. People unknowingly build prisons for themselves through the stories they repeat. A person who believes they are shy might avoid social situations, reinforcing their discomfort around people. Someone who believes they are bad at math might stop trying to improve, solidifying their weakness in the subject. These are not immutable traits. They are identities people have adopted, often without question, and once an identity takes root, the mind looks for evidence to support it. Confirmation bias ensures that we filter the world in a way that validates our pre-existing beliefs about ourselves. But here's the crucial realization. Just as you constructed a limiting story, you can construct an empowering one. You can decide right now to tell a different tale. You can choose to view yourself as capable, adaptable, and evolving. Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you can say, I'm learning. Instead of saying, I'm stuck, you can say, I'm growing. This shift in narrative doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you act, and those actions shape your reality. The problem is that most people don't challenge the stories they've accepted. They don't ask, where did this belief come from? Is it true? Does it serve me? They assume their thoughts are reality, when in fact their thoughts are just interpretations. If you were told as a child that you weren't smart enough, you might still be carrying that belief without questioning its validity. If you failed at something years ago, you might still be defining yourself by that moment, as if one event determines your entire identity. Neuroscience has shown that the brain is highly adaptable. This means that the way you think about yourself is not fixed. It can be rewired. Every time you choose to interpret a situation differently, you are forging new neural pathways. Every time you act against an old belief, you weaken its hold on you. The more you reinforce a new narrative, the more it becomes your default identity. This isn't about self-deception or blind optimism. It's about recognizing that the self is a work in progress, not a finished product. It's about understanding that who you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow. Your identity is not something you discover, it's something you create. And the first step in that creation is changing the way you see yourself. From an early age, people absorb beliefs about themselves from their environment. These beliefs come from parents, teachers, friends, society, and personal experiences. Over time, they solidify into a self-concept, a framework that dictates what a person believes they are capable of achieving. But what if that framework is flawed? What if it is built on outdated experiences, past failures, or the opinions of others who never truly understood your potential? Too often, people carry self-limiting beliefs without questioning their validity. They accept them as reality rather than recognizing them as mere stories that can be rewritten. A self-limiting belief is any thought or assumption that restricts growth. It is the voice in your head that says, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I'll never be successful, or I don't deserve happiness. These thoughts create mental barriers that become as real as physical walls. The tragedy is that many of these beliefs were never consciously chosen. They were absorbed from fleeting moments of failure, critical words from authority figures, or societal standards that have no bearing on individual potential. The human brain is wired to seek patterns. If a person fails at something once, they may start seeing themselves as a failure in that area. If they receive criticism at a young age, they might carry that insecurity into adulthood. The problem is that the brain also has a bias toward negativity. It remembers failures more than successes and gives more weight to criticism than praise. This means that many of the self-limiting beliefs people hold are not based on objective truth, but on distorted perceptions. Challenging these beliefs requires conscious effort. It starts with awareness, recognizing that not every thought you have about yourself is true. Just because you think something doesn't make it a fact, thoughts are just neural impulses shaped by past experiences and social conditioning. If a belief is limiting your potential, it is worth questioning its origin. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Who told me this? Is there real evidence for it, or have I simply been reinforcing it by acting as if it were true? Rewriting your narrative means replacing limiting beliefs with empowering ones. Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you can say, I'm learning and improving. Instead of saying, I always fail, you can say, every failure is a step toward success. This shift in language might seem small, but its impact is profound. The words you use shape your thoughts, and your thoughts shape your actions. By choosing different words, you rewire your brain to expect growth rather than stagnation. It is also essential to act in contradiction to limiting beliefs. If you believe you are bad at public speaking, the only way to dismantle that belief is to speak in public and prove to yourself that you can improve. If you believe you are not creative, challenge yourself to create something. Write, draw, design, build. Action is the antidote to self-doubt, meaning and proof. It provides tangible proof that your limitations are not as concrete as they seem. One of the most powerful ways to challenge limiting beliefs is to look at examples of people who have defied similar constraints. History is filled with individuals who were told they would never succeed, people who failed, struggled, and were underestimated, only to rise beyond all expectations. Thomas Edison was told he was too stupid to learn anything. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job. Rowling was rejected by multiple publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. These individuals did not accept the narratives imposed on them. They rewrote their stories, and in doing so, they reshaped their realities. It is also crucial to surround yourself with people who reinforce an empowering narrative. If you are constantly around individuals who doubt you, who feed into your fears, and who reinforce your limitations, it becomes much harder to change your self-image. Seek out those who believe in growth, who push you to do better, and who remind you of your potential. The perspectives of others influence how you see yourself, so be intentional about whose voices you allow into your life. Ultimately, the mind is flexible. It is not a static entity, but a dynamic, evolving system that responds to the inputs it receives. If you challenge self-limiting beliefs consistently, they lose their power. If you replace them with empowering beliefs and act in alignment with them, your identity begins to shift. The way you see yourself is not a permanent reality. It is a story, and like any story, it can be rewritten. Perception is not just a reflection of reality. It is the filter through which reality is interpreted. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different conclusions about what it means. The difference is not in what happened, but in how it was perceived. The way you see yourself operates under the same principle. If you believe you are capable, competent, and resilient, you will act in ways that reinforce those qualities. If you believe you are weak, inadequate, or destined to fail, your actions will align with that identity. The mind seeks to confirm what it already believes, and this self-fulfilling cycle dictates the trajectory of your life. People often underestimate the degree to which their perception influences outcomes. They assume they are simply reacting to reality when, in truth, they are shaping it through their interpretations. A person who sees themselves as unlucky will notice every misfortune and ignore moments of opportunity. A person who believes they are unworthy of success will sabotage their own efforts, sometimes without even realizing it. These patterns are not accidental. They stem from deeply held beliefs about what is possible and what is not. The most dangerous perceptions are the ones that go unquestioned. A person might say, "That's just who I am," as if their identity were set in stone. But who decided that? Was it a past experience, a careless remark from someone else? A single failure that was blown out of proportion? Most limiting self-perceptions are not grounded in objective truth, but in old interpretations that were never challenged. When a person begins to see themselves differently, their world begins to shift accordingly. Neuroscience supports this idea. The brain is not a fixed machine. It is adaptable, capable of rewiring itself based on repeated thoughts and behaviors. When a person consistently tells themselves they are inadequate, their brain strengthens the neural pathways associated with self-doubt. But when they deliberately shift their perception, when they start seeing themselves as strong, capable, and evolving, new pathways begin to form. Over time, these new neural connections become dominant, reshaping not only self-perception, but also the actions that arise from it. The way you see yourself dictates what you attempt. A person who believes they are unathletic will avoid sports, reinforcing their lack of skill. Someone who believes they are bad at business will hesitate to take risks, limiting their chances of success. On the other hand, those who see themselves as adaptable will take on challenges with the expectation of growth. This difference in perception determines who thrives and who remains stagnant. The world provides endless evidence for multiple interpretations of the self. A person can focus on every mistake they've made, every time they were rejected, every moment of failure, and build an identity based on those moments. Or they can focus on the times they succeeded, the obstacles they overcame, and the skills they developed along the way. The question is not whether evidence exists to support a positive or negative self-perception. The question is which evidence you choose to focus on. The influence of self-perception extends beyond individual achievement. It affects relationships, communication, and overall well-being. Someone who sees themselves as unworthy of love will struggle to maintain healthy relationships because they will subconsciously seek out dynamics that confirm that belief. A person who sees themselves as unintelligent will avoid intellectual pursuits, further reinforcing their sense of inadequacy. The lens through which you view yourself determines what you allow yourself to experience in life. This does not mean ignoring flaws or pretending to be perfect. It means recognizing that flaws do not define you, that growth is always possible, and that setbacks do not determine your future. It means understanding that perception is a choice. People who achieve greatness are not those who never failed. They are those who refuse to let failure define their identity. They saw themselves as capable of improvement, and that perception fueled their perseverance. Changing self-perception is not about superficial affirmations or blind optimism. It is about intentionally constructing a vision of yourself that aligns with growth, resilience, and capability. It is about recognizing that the way you see yourself is not an objective truth, but a perspective that can be adjusted. The process begins with questioning the beliefs that hold you back, actively seeking out evidence of your strengths and taking actions that reinforce the identity you want to adopt. When you shift your perception, you shift your reality. Responsibility is the foundation of transformation. When people take responsibility for their actions, thoughts, and circumstances, they gain control over their lives. Many individuals go through life feeling powerless, blaming external factors for their struggles. They attribute their failures to luck, their limitations to genetics, and their lack of progress to circumstances beyond their control. While external factors do play a role, the most significant influence on a person's life is their own willingness to take responsibility. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong. It means acknowledging that while you may not be at fault for every challenge you face, you are in control of how you respond. There is immense power in that realization. Power in that realization. The moment you shift from a mindset of victimhood to one of responsibility, you regain agency over your life. You stop waiting for circumstances to change and start creating the change yourself. A person who refuses to take responsibility remains stuck. They see themselves as a product of their past, their upbringing, or the failures they have endured. They believe their emotions control them rather than recognizing that they have control over their emotions. They believe their circumstances define them rather than realizing they have the power to define their circumstances. When responsibility is avoided, so is personal growth. Many people fear responsibility because it comes with pressure. If you acknowledge that your life is in your hands, you must also acknowledge that your choices matter. That is a heavy burden to carry, but it is also liberating. When you take full responsibility, you no longer have to rely on luck, external validation, or the approval of others to move forward. You realize that success, improvement, and fulfillment are within your control. The way a person sees themselves is deeply influenced by their willingness to take responsibility. Someone who views themselves as weak or incapable often does so because they have relinquished control over their life. They feel like things happen to them rather than recognizing that they are an active participant in shaping their future. The act of taking responsibility rewires this perception. The more responsibility you take, the stronger and more capable you feel. Responsibility is the antidote to self-doubt. So, every time a person blames external forces for their failures, they reinforce a narrative of helplessness. If they believe they cannot succeed because of their upbringing, they will never take the steps necessary to break free from it. If they believe they are destined to fail because of past mistakes, they will not attempt to improve. These beliefs create a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more a person avoids responsibility, the more powerless they feel, and the more powerless they feel, the less likely they are to take responsibility. Responsibility is not just about actions, it is about thoughts as well. People often assume their thoughts are beyond their control, that their emotions dictate their behavior. But thoughts can be trained, shaped, and redirected. A person who takes responsibility for their mindset recognizes that while they cannot control every thought that enters their mind, they can control which thoughts they entertain. They can choose to focus on possibilities instead of limitations, on solutions instead of obstacles. This shift in mindset does not happen overnight. It requires daily effort. It requires catching yourself when you start making excuses and replacing those excuses with action. It requires stepping back and questioning whether your current self-perception is based on reality or on a narrative you have accepted without question. Most importantly, it requires the willingness to be uncomfortable. Taking responsibility means admitting where you have fallen short, where you have allowed fear to dictate your choices, and where you have failed to push yourself. The discomfort of responsibility is temporary, but the rewards are lasting. When you take responsibility for your growth, you begin to see yourself differently. You no longer view yourself as someone who is stuck, but as someone who is evolving. You stop looking at obstacles as reasons to quit and start seeing them as challenges to overcome. You start acting in alignment with the person you want to become rather than the person you have been. Taking responsibility is not about perfection. It does not mean you will never struggle, never doubt yourself, or never face setbacks. It simply means that when those moments arise, you will not allow them to define you. You will not hand over control to circumstances, excuses, or fear. You will recognize that your future is determined by the choices you make today, and you will take ownership of those choices. The more responsibility you take, the more capable you become. The people you surround yourself with have a profound impact on the way you see yourself. Human beings are social creatures, and much of their identity is shaped by interactions with others. From a young age, people learn who they are based on how they are treated, what is expected of them, and the beliefs that are reinforced by those around them. If a person is constantly surrounded by negativity, doubt, and limitation, they begin to internalize those perspectives. If they are surrounded by encouragement, ambition, and growth, they absorb those qualities instead. Every conversation, every interaction, and every relationship contributes to the narrative a person holds about themselves. If you are in an environment where people doubt you, dismiss your potential, or reinforce your insecurities, it becomes incredibly difficult to see yourself as capable and strong. Even the most driven individuals are influenced by the energy around them. A negative environment can act as a weight, holding a person back, making them second-guess themselves and discouraging them from striving for more. Many people fail to recognize the extent to which their social circles shape their self-image. They assume that their thoughts about themselves are purely their own. But in reality, those thoughts are often echoes of the messages they have received from others. If a person grows up hearing that they are not smart enough, not talented enough, or not capable of success, those messages take root. Even if they logically know they have potential, those early influences can create deep-seated doubts. This is why it is crucial to be intentional about who you allow into your life. If you want to change the way you see yourself, you must surround yourself with people who see you as capable, resilient, and full of potential. When you are around those who believe in growth, who push themselves, and who challenge you to be better, you begin to see yourself differently. Their mindset becomes contagious, and their belief in you reinforces your own belief in yourself. The opposite is also true. If you spend time with people who are complacent, who see failure as permanent, or who resent those who strive for more, their perspective will influence you. It is difficult to maintain a strong sense of self-worth in an environment that constantly undermines it. This does not mean cutting off everyone who has ever doubted you, but it does mean being mindful of how different relationships affect your self-perception. One of the most significant indicators of personal growth is the quality of conversations you engage in. If your daily interactions involve gossip, complaints, and excuses, your mindset will reflect that. If your conversations revolve around ideas, ambitions, and solutions, you will start to think in those terms. The way people talk about themselves and their circumstances influences how you talk about yourself and your own future. It is also important to recognize the difference between constructive criticism and destructive negativity. Surrounding yourself with supportive people does not mean seeking out those who always agree with you or tell you what you want to hear. Growth comes from being challenged, from receiving honest feedback, and from being held to a higher standard. The key difference is that true supporters push you to improve, whereas negative influences try to keep you down. A mentor who challenges you to do better is different from a friend who discourages you out of their own fear of change. Changing your social environment does not always mean removing people from your life. Sometimes it means adding new influences. Books, podcasts, and educational content can expose you to new ways of thinking. Seeking out mentors, joining communities of like-minded individuals, and engaging with people who inspire you can reshape your perspective. In the digital age, access to positive influences is more available than ever, but it requires conscious effort to seek out voices that elevate rather than diminish you. The people you spend time with influence what you believe is possible. If you are surrounded by individuals who have low expectations for themselves, you may unconsciously lower your expectations as well. If you are surrounded by people who push themselves beyond their comfort zones, who embrace challenges, and who strive for more, you will start to adopt that mindset. Now, human beings mirror the behaviors and attitudes of those around them, often without realizing it. Self-perception is not formed in isolation. It is constantly reinforced by the environment a person operates in. If you want to see yourself as strong, capable, and worthy of success, you need to be in a space that reflects those values. This does not mean waiting for the perfect group of people to appear. It means actively seeking out relationships that uplift and challenge you. Growth is a choice, and that choice is made easier when you have a network of people who reinforce the best version of yourself. Action is the most powerful force in reshaping self-perception. No amount of positive thinking, self-reflection, or motivation can replace the transformative effect of taking action. People often wait until they feel confident before they take action, but the truth is that confidence is built through action. The way you see yourself is directly influenced by what you do, not just by what you think. Every action you take reinforces a particular identity, and over time that identity becomes the foundation of your self-concept. Many people remain stuck because they believe they need to have everything figured out before they start. They wait for the perfect moment, the right mindset, or a guarantee of success before they take a step forward. This mindset keeps them trapped. The perfect moment never arrives, and the fear of failure becomes a justification for inaction. But action itself is what creates clarity. By taking even small steps, you gain experience, learn from mistakes, and develop the skills necessary to move forward with greater confidence. Self-doubt thrives in inaction. When you hesitate, overanalyze, or avoid challenges, your mind starts reinforcing narratives of inadequacy. And you begin to see yourself as someone who can't rather than someone who does. The longer you wait to take action, the stronger those doubts become. The only way to break the cycle is to act before you feel ready. When you take action despite fear or uncertainty, you prove to yourself that you are capable. And that proof is far more powerful than any external validation or motivational speech. The brain is wired to reinforce whatever behaviors you engage in most frequently. If you constantly procrastinate, your brain strengthens the identity of someone who hesitates. If you consistently push yourself into action, your brain builds the identity of someone who takes initiative. The key is to focus on momentum rather than perfection. Taking imperfect action is always better than doing nothing at all. Each step forward, no matter how small, builds a sense of agency and reinforces the belief that you are in control of your life. One of the most common excuses for inaction is the fear of failure. People are often so afraid of making mistakes that they avoid taking risks altogether. But failure is not the opposite of success. It is a necessary part of the process. Every successful person has failed repeatedly, not because they were incapable, but because they were willing to try. The difference between those who succeed and those who do not is not the absence of failure, but the willingness to persist despite it. Failure provides valuable feedback. It reveals weaknesses that need improvement, exposes blind spots, and teaches lessons that cannot be learned through passive observation. The more you fail, the more resilient you become. Over time, failure stops being something to fear and starts being something to embrace as part of growth. By taking action despite the risk of failure, you rewire your perception of yourself from someone who is afraid to someone who is resilient. Action also shapes identity by reinforcing habits. If you want to see yourself as disciplined, act with discipline. If you want to see yourself as a leader, start leading in whatever capacity you can. Identity follows behavior, not the other way around. People often assume they need to feel a certain way before they can act, but in reality, acting as if you already embody the qualities you desire is what leads to real change. The more you behave in alignment with the person you want to become, the more that identity solidifies. Another powerful aspect of action is that it creates evidence. If you tell yourself you are capable but never take action, your mind has no real proof to support that belief. But if you take action and if you complete a project, achieve a goal, or overcome a challenge, you build real, undeniable evidence that you are capable. This evidence strengthens your self-image far more effectively than positive thinking alone. Many people remain stuck in the planning phase, convincing themselves that they are preparing for the right moment. But excessive planning without execution is just disguised procrastination. There is a point where more information, more preparation, and more analysis do not lead to better results. They just create more hesitation. The best way to learn, grow, and develop confidence is to engage with the real world, take risks, and adjust as you go. Action is also what separates those who dream from those who achieve. Many people have big ideas, ambitious goals, and aspirations, but very few take consistent action toward making them a reality. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is bridged by what you do every day. Taking action is what transforms potential into progress, and progress is what reshapes self-perception.